And we're driving down Wilshire Boulevard, heading into Beverly Hills, and the phone rings. And it's Dr. Giuliana. And our plan once again changed. We thought we were in the clear. We thought a double mastectomy. Everything on that legal pad said, we're never going to have to look over our shoulders. We're going to be done with this once and for all. This was going to be it. And he says, Giuliana and Bill, I don't know how to tell you this, but I found something incidentally while we were in there on your left breast, and it was a mucinous tumor. He said, it's the craziest thing. 6 centimeters. Is it centimeters? I don't know, millimeters? You guys would know better than me. I'm getting the centimeters. And I pulled the car over, and Giuliana was hysterically crying because we knew what that meant. It meant that chemotherapy was now going to be introduced into the equation, and it was a HER2 positive tumor, and it was something that we weren't prepared for. So I turned the car around, and we went back to the house, and I immediately called my very good friend Rick Childs at the NIH. And Rick said, I want everything sent to me. Something doesn't make sense here. When we looked at this picture individually, the proper course of action was going to be the chemotherapy, radiation, going down that path. But something didn't make sense. Nothing had shown up on the MRIs, nothing had shown up on the mammograms there, and we got everything sent to my friend Rick, and he then had it looked at again by Maria, the pathologist at the NIH.
Yeah, Maria Marino.
Mm-hmm. And she really dug into this. And she said, wait a minute, when I look at this, there are only 44 cells here. Typically, as you guys probably know, it should be millions of cells, or even more than that. But this is 44 cells. It was an incidental finding. It didn't show up on any of the imaging. Something isn't right here. So we kept digging, and we kept digging and probing and asking questions. And finally, I got all 3 of these doctors on a conference call. I got Cliff Hudis, I got Dev Paul, and I got Rick Childs. And I said, we're not hanging up until we are all in agreement on what we're doing. And sure enough, because we peeled off the layers of that onion, slowly but surely, it started to make more sense. It was not a 6-centimeter tumor. It would have been impossible for a 6-centimeter mucinous tumor to only contain 44 cells. So we got on that call, and we were in New York. I remember that. We were getting ready for Times Square, I think.
That's right. And it was just such a strange thing that was going on because, you know, before hearing this from Maria, the pathologist, we had been told days before from one of our doctors, I'm prescribing chemotherapy to you. And he said, but before I do, I just want you to know, we overprescribe chemotherapy because we're never really sure. Meaning, if there's 100 people and 99 of them aren't going to have a recurrence, but one will, we'd rather have everyone go through the treatment and save that one. And I heard this and I thought, wait a second. So if I'm one of those people who don't need it, I still have to go through this chemotherapy and hear all these maybe go through these side effects you're telling me about. And it was just such a scary time. None of it made sense. And what it really came down to was just getting everyone on the same page, everyone getting together and just figuring it out. And it didn't take long once everyone got together to just look at it all and figure it out.
But I think oftentimes in the medical community, we have tunnel vision. Not we. I'm not a member of the medical community. I wish. But oftentimes, it's like other professions where you get caught in that comfort zone. You've got the blinders on, and it's so easy to say, okay, you got A, you're going to get B. That's how it works. Rather than peeling those blinders off and introducing a little bit of agility, saying, let's look at the big picture here. Let's look at the entire scope. What else is happening here? Telling that story. And us as patients, as a patient and a caregiver, it was important that they knew the entire story and the entire process. And I think it was also important that people understand that they've got to manage their health care. Our parents grew up in a much different world where they were afraid to ask questions. They were afraid to say, well, what about this? Or let me talk to somebody else, because the doctor or the medical professional was God. But I think the world has changed, and the way information is shared has changed. And thank God for that, because when we hung up that conference call, we were all in agreement that chemotherapy was not the proper course of treatment. And one of the doctors on the call said, if I prescribe chemotherapy to you and you develop a cardiac problem, I would have one hell of a time defending that to my colleagues. My colleagues would say, why would you prescribe chemotherapy to this young lady? So for us, we finally turned the corner. For us, we've finally gotten some good news. It was absolutely remarkable.